Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, TireRack.com, and RockAuto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek podcast number 280. And with us today at MotorWeek World Headquarters is Greg Carlos, Jessica Ray, and Alexander Kellum. We're going to run down 3 vehicles today. We've got a lightning round. We've even got a viewer question, a little rant and raves in here. But we're going to start with a vehicle that basically we didn't believe was really going to happen until it happened. And that's the 2023 Cadillac Escalade V. And Jessica, you've had a chance to see it up close and personal. So tell us, is it as awesome as it appeared?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just like, it's such a silly vehicle.
It's a
almost.
silly vehicle, but
at just the right time, because gas prices are silly too. Perfect timing.
Well, I guess maybe that's a good time to mention the price, which is about $150,000. So if you have 6 figures to spend, or basically many of our mortgages essentially to spend on a car like this, you're not paying that.
And you want to
close
show
attention.
off that you can afford that and the gas.
Yeah, you're not
premium,
paying,
I'm sure.
Yes, you're not paying that close attention to gas prices. But yeah, I mean, this thing it's insane. I mean, just the sound of it. If any of our viewers out there can recall our road test with the CT5V Blackwing, it is that similar engine, the LT4, 6.2 liter supercharged V8. And so it just has this amazing sound to it that just when you turn it on, and then you just slam on the throttle, sounds
and
so awesome.
I hate to say it, but it's a sound that we're not going to hear that often in the future from new vehicles.
Yeah.
This may be one of the last super high performance V8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything, let alone a car or an SUV. I mean, here you've taken the largest SUV that General Motors makes and put in arguably, I guess, the most powerful. Is it the most powerful V8 they make? Is the Vet more powerful?
I think it's close.
It's very close.
I mean, there's now an LT5.
Right.
So it's the last generation of this 6.2 liter. It might not be the most powerful one they make, because I think they still make a crate motor that might be a little bigger than that. I'm not sure.
Anything they had to leave out because of it. I mean, here's a 7-passenger plus big SUV, full-framed SUV.
This is basically so. Obviously this is the supercharged engine, but inside and out, pretty much the same exact as a normal Cadillac Escalade. The interior is the same interior that you get with the Platinum, so it's not, which is their luxury vehicle, their luxury trim. So it's not. They didn't want it to be like Boy Racer with like a red sport interior, like a bright red. So it's just like dark auburn or jet black colors that you get. But it's
classy still.
It's still classy.
Yeah. Wouldn't want to bring attention to yourself with an AT4
as you're laying down smoke at the stoplight.
You'll bring enough engine with the sound that it makes. But yeah, there's no compromise inside, and also what kind of surprised me is that it's available in the normal wheelbase and the longer ESV wheelbase, which oddly enough, the only press cars they had for us on this first drive were the long wheelbase ESVs. That's what the factory made.
Well, I think that's probably also saying that the folks that basically are going to be in the market for this want to get everything they can out of it.
As much as you can, as much Escalade as you can get.
Well, I should probably mention numbers, right?
Sure,
so
please.
682 horsepower, 653 pound-feet of torque. You have that same 10-speed automatic, but it's supposed to get the normal wheelbase is a 4.4 second 0 to 60. They said the ESV gets a 4.5 second 0 to 60, and it should do under 13 seconds in the quarter mile.
And ladies and gentlemen, this from the same brand that is going all electric, and in a couple of weeks we're going to be basically getting up close and personal with the new Cadillac Lyriq, their first all electric SUV. But I'm delighted to see them going out with a bang, and I think keeping the door ajar just a little bit in case they maybe not quite ready to go full EV like they've said in the early press releases.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the most fun you can have in an Escalade, and will be the most fun we'll have in an Escalade until there's an all-electric version of the Escalade. You know, and also,
and I'm sure that's coming. I'm sure it's all coming.
It has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, that is their bread and butter. This platform is their bread and butter, and they do it so well.
Yeah.
But I also should mention too that this has the most updated version of Super Cruise, which now includes automatic lane changing, which is fantastic.
Now, tell us the difference between Super Cruise and the typical autonomous driving or semi-autonomous driving system that we've seen in a lot of other brands.
So Super Cruise, this is hands-free. So it's not your typical driver assistance where you still have to be paying attention, of course, but you don't have to have your hands on the wheel. And the thing with Super Cruise is that it is only active on certain roads.
Because those roads are in the memory.
Yes, they have all been mapped by...
Whereas I think Tesla or others actually use parameters. Like it looks and sees and says, okay, maybe I've never been on this road before, but it looks like all the lane markings are good. I can do it. Whereas, like you were saying, GM is like, nope, we only do it on roads we've actually driven on and have deemed them acceptable for our system.
Yes, like the car not only does the car know the road, but then the car has cameras and sensors all around it, so it utilizes both, which in the future of autonomy is incredibly important because we really cannot move forward to another level without something like that. You need to have two different types. You'll have to map, you'll have to have sensors and cameras, etc. But
the big deal with this one is this new system is that if something appears in front of you, it will get out of the way.
Yeah, it's just a really, really advanced adaptive cruise control, right? So you're cruising on the highway, you're staying in the right-hand lane, you're coming up on a car that is driving slower than what you have the cruise control set at. It will move to the left-hand lane as long as that lane is clear, and it will pass that car and then move back into the right-hand lane.
So not just slow down, but actually go around them.
Correct.
If it's clear. And that to me is a huge improvement. So.
Yes, and it's one of those things that you drive down, 6 hours on 95, and you probably will not have to touch the steering wheel because that entire route is
as long as you're
mapped.
looking forward and perhaps not wearing sunglasses. Because if I can compare it to Lexus's system, which they call Teammate, I think, it couldn't even see through like my normal sunglasses, and that's part of the system is to make sure you're looking forward, and if it can't see your eyes, like I said, through these sunglasses, that's an issue. I'm not saying that for the Super Cruise.
Well,
I think that's an interesting point, though.
I should mention, we were in Arizona, so I was wearing sunglasses the entire time I was there. And so the Super Cruise had no problem
there you go.
seeing that. Yeah.
So to be fair, Ford also has a similar system.
Blue Cruise,
although it doesn't have all this capability yet.
Does not. I think this is pretty much as advanced as it gets, other than for typical OEMs. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to stay with General Motors for our next review, and we're going to turn to Alex for this. The 2022 GMC Sierra Denali Ultimate and the AT4X.
Yeah,
take it away.
I had the opportunity to drive both in San Diego last month. Admittedly, I spent a whole day in the AT4X and the Denali Ultimate. I only got to spend an afternoon with.
But you're not really complaining about that.
No, not at all. No. So I'll start with the Denali Ultimate because that's kind of the shorter of the two, which also had Super Cruise in it, and I got to kind of experience that a little bit. Again, granted, for a much less amount of time. So the one I drove had a 6.2 liter V8, and the reason I bring that up is because trucks are big, trucks are heavy. This thing is loaded with everything you could possibly want. It's a luxury pickup. That being said, the 6.2 liter, I think it's 420 horsepower.
I take it you were in a crew cab.
Yeah. This thing had no issues getting on the highway. I felt very comfortable. And it makes sense because, I mean, like I said, the thing's loaded. We got 16-way power adjustable seats, heated and cooled, massaging, all that kind of stuff. You had a 15-inch head-up display, a 13-inch infotainment, and a 12-inch digital gauge cluster. You had a suede headliner and all that jazz. Everybody was very comfortable, and at the open pour wood trim with the Denali, everything. you get a lot in the truck, which makes sense because its MSRP is around $86K.
I'm sure you can get over six figures too if you want to.
82,000 actually. And whenever I look at these trucks, and admittedly going out for this event, I was like, man, trucks are just so expensive. Like, who buys these? But I will admit, every time, right? Yeah, exactly.
7-year loan.
Yeah, exactly. You get in it, and you're like, yeah, I get it. This thing is loaded. It has everything in it. And every now and then, someone will say like, well, no one takes those, off road, or no one takes those and does that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, but. They're buying them. People want them for other things. That then leads me into the AT4X, which is an off-roader. So obviously they already have the Sierra Denali, and they already had an AT4, but the X and the Denali Ultimate are sort of like elevated platforms of that. So with the X, you do get some other like additional off-road goodies, so it is a little more capable. But again, it's the same deal where you're getting the 6-way or 16-way power adjustable seats, massage functions. You're getting the head-up display and all of that. So think of it as like almost like a luxury off-roader.
Like a Denali off-roader.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. That's effectively what it is. It still had the 6.2-liter V8 in it, so same powertrain. I think it's a 10-speed automatic gearbox. Highway driving was fine. It's about what you would expect. Very comfortable. And I didn't feel like the on-road quality was sacrificed due to like the off-road tires or the special.
So you didn't hear a lot
it
of
wasn't.
tire
Was not
whine
super loud. Didn't get a lot of road noise or rubber from it. But then going off road, we went to I'm probably butchering the name, Anza Borrego Desert State Park, and we aired down the tires. We went out into the sand, and yeah, the AT4X, unsurprisingly, was very competent at it. I was a little worried that the 6.2 liter would be maybe just a little too torquey or would spin a little bit on the rocks, but it was fine. We were getting up to 60 miles an hour out in the sand, and no problem at all.
So when you were in the sand, I'm curious, how much did you take the tires down? Do you recall?
If memory serves correct, it was like 17 psi.
Okay.
Like it was low.
But that's necessary. I mean, a lot of people that go, especially like here on the East Coast, they go out to the Outer Banks and they get stuck because they don't take the tires down enough.
And I could be wrong, but if you don't air them down enough and you keep running your car like that, like you could cause damage to the engine if it's straining it too much. Right. But I mean, that's an obvious case if you're straining it.
But you had no problems in sand?
No problem. We went up, there's a location in the park called Devil's Drop, which isn't as scary as the name alludes to, but it's still a steep drop, and then you got to come back up, and it's bumpy the whole way. I didn't have any issues, and I was very comfortable doing it. I had the massagers on and everything. So, if you're going to go off-roading and you want to do it in luxury, why not go with that? And that one MSRP is around $76K. So again, if you want the complete package, that's the way to go. But if you don't want all that extra stuff, you can go with the standard AT4, which is still very, very loaded.
I have to say, I saw something the other day that really looked kind of silly. It was a brand new Ford Bronco 4-door, and the front doors are off and the back doors were on.
Nice. Dude, living it up.
You don't want your kids to fall out.
That's it. I guess that's exactly what they're thinking, is like to make sure the children were safe. But it just looked really weird.
Yeah, but if you fall out, the children are not in good shape, are they?
Any questions, anybody?
I mean, I think it. Did they say whether these, we would see a Denali Ultimate or an AT4X on some other models, some GMC models?
That was not, as far as I remember, it was not.
They couldn't conjecture on.
But traditionally, that's what they've done.
Yeah, I would imagine we're going to see, because they kept bringing up, like, well, the AT4, we use that in other models because we try and, or like the Denali because we want to step it up.
Terrain.
Yeah.
And
since it's primarily just trim packages. Yeah. I mean, they've been very successful. I give GMC a lot of credit. I didn't think they would ever be able to make GMC into a luxury brand, but they've done it. It's taken them a long time, but they've done it. Okay, but we're going to come back to Greg, who's going to bring us up to date on one of our favorite sedans, one that is still around and still running strong. We're going to switch now to the lightning round. And each of us have as much time really as we want to talk about something that is a trending automotive topic. I was sent an article that was written by Rachel Wolf in the Wall Street Journal detailing a road trip that she took from New Orleans to Chicago in a rented Kia EV6, all-electric 5-door. She basically spent about 18 hours charging and only 16 hours sleeping over 3.5 days. We've all taken a look at the article, and I'm wondering, I thought she did a good job of telling about what would happen if you're a first-time driver of an all-electric vehicle and you're trying to use it as a normal car. Having said that, most of the people that have bought these vehicles so far are probably still in the early adopter category, and they've done their homework. They basically have been prepared when they've gone off for a trip. I don't think she was as prepared as they have, and she's ran into more problems. But not to put her and her companion down, I think they were very typical problems, and problems that are challenges for folks that are thinking about buying EVs. Having said that, let me just open it up. What do you think she should have done differently, or maybe to make that trip a little bit better? And for that matter, you can even talk about shortcomings in the car that hurt the effort.
I think an easy shortcoming in the car is the fact that there's no native route planning in the EV6.
Like there is in like the Mach-E and Taycan and a lot of others.
We've talked about it before, you know.
That actually shows you where the
even
chargers
Volvo
are.
has a system too.
Volvo, I love
I think theirs
Volvo's
is through
system.
Google too.
Yes, Volvo, I think, has one of the best systems for that. It's like we had the C40 recharge in, and it was just fantastic. But yeah, so if you don't have that, a lot of people talk about range anxiety. When you have a system like that within your car, reading your car's data, there is no range anxiety, because it says you're going to be at 15% when you stop at this charger, and you will stop here and charge for 45 minutes, and you will get to this percentage, and then you get back on the road. So it will plan your entire trip for you. It even has, what type of chargers are there. If it's a 150 kilowatt fast charger, is it a 300?
Which is very important, because that's
Yes.
all about the amount of time it takes to recharge the car.
Yes. So
And they ran into that problem.
correct, and not having that, and also not knowing the differences between the fast charging, because level 2 is not really fast charging,
No.
but I think some people might think it
Because
is a fast charger.
it's faster than 110.
Right, which at this point,
is
and
really
everything
slow.
is faster than 110. But level 2, which there's a lot of level 2s out there, kind of at random places, dealerships,
Yeah, grocery stores.
But that's not anything you want to stop at on a road trip.
No, level 2 will give you something in the order of 14 to 16 miles per hour in charging.
Yeah,
Where a real fast charger, DC fast charger, theoretically should be able to get you up to 80% in under 40 minutes.
right, and that's if you could stop at a level 2 when you're done for the night, on a road trip, because then you'll probably start somewhere closer to 85%, 90%. But yeah, that's a really, if she was in a different car, that article would be completely different.
Anybody else?
I think she kind of got jumped on by a lot of our automotive journalist friends, because, like you alluded to, John, like we live and breathe this stuff. We understand.
We should know what to do. By gosh,
and I think that came through. Because she had mentioned that, it turns out that it's actually less efficient on the highway. Well, actually, we know that.
Yeah.
Electric cars are built generally
more power
for the city,
use.
right?
Yeah.
So that's something she could have known. She had mentioned that she left it in cruise control, and I would imagine it's adaptive cruise control in the EV6. She thought that was the most efficient way, and I'm not so convinced. I don't have any data to back myself up on it, but I know when I use cruise control, adaptive cruise control, it's the speed is up and down because you're following different cars. I don't think that's super efficient. So there are minor things like that, but I think that the main thing that I would have done differently is base the trip around fast chargers, because that's what fast chargers are for long trips. And she did it, I think, based off of just what a traditional ICE car would do, just straight up the highway, and then find those level 2s along the way. Yeah, you might have had to go out of the way. It wasn't the most direct route, but if you would plan it around fast chargers, I think she would have found that it would have been a lot less stressful. And ultimately, since you're not on the highway as much, you probably wouldn't use as much battery power.
And there are some very good apps that even if you don't have the car's capability to map out the route, there are some good apps available. One of the best and oldest, actually, is the ones from our friends at the U.S. Department of Energy. If you just go onto the App Store and plug in Alt Fuels, it'll pop up. And you can tailor it to just show you fast chargers, and it'll plan your route. But there are others, right?
Yes, there are. Yeah.
What was the one?
PlugShare.
PlugShare. That's, it just went right out of my head.
That'll show you
That's a good one
everything
as well.
around. Yeah.
You have to be a little more.
You have to be a little more savvy because the nomenclature for like chargers, it'll give you like the weird like numbers and stuff sometimes. So you just have to sort of.
Yeah, I thought that I did. I picked that up too on PlugShare. It gives you the types of plugs,
like CC,
and it's like,
it's
most
not telling me
people
the
don't
info
know
I want.
that.
I want to know how fast it is. Is it working?
Yeah.
And each of the major, now on my phone, I've got an app from all of the major charging networks. So whatever I end up at, I'm prepared for that. And that's something else you could have done.
I think this highlights generally, though, that electric vehicles, for the most part, maybe Tesla excluded, are not ready for these types of trips. Just like, hey, I'm going to go take a road trip. I got to go 1,000 miles. I mean, you have to like seriously plan these things out, especially in the middle of the country. We're kind of different on the East Coast.
The East and West Coast, you've got more chargers.
We've got a lot of chargers. The infrastructure's a lot better. But
I know when I go see my sister who lives down in North Carolina, and she lives in an area where you would think it's pretty metropolitan, but the nearest fast charger is like 20 miles from her house, and she doesn't have the capability to charge overnight except with the 110. Alex, anything you might have done different?
Well, kind of going, basically the main point I was going to make was already said is really it's a good like kind of like exercise in comparing what an EV can do compared to traditionally what you would do in an ICE, but it does go to show that, the infrastructure is just not there yet. But the thing that I wanted to point out that stood out in the article to me was, so she rented the car, and this isn't obviously like an attack or anything, but she rented the car through Turo, and she wasn't even sure if it ended up being like the long range model or the version, the top trim that had, I think, like 310 miles.
Yes.
Now,
it's like a 50-mile difference between the two.
And I was going to say, like, I know like 50 miles isn't like the end of the world, but especially when range anxiety being the thing that it is, 50 miles can make a big difference.
It's a lot for an EV.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I'm not saying that not saying anything offensive about it, but maybe she could have known like going into it, like, do I have the model that's better equipped for this?
She was misled by Turo.
And that goes to show that when people go out and buy EVs, they have to do their homework and know what they're going to do.
Hertz and other big rental car companies have bought thousands. They haven't gotten them all yet, but they have ordered thousands and thousands of EVs to be put in normal rental car fleets. So if people say go to Florida and they end up with an EV, outside of Disney World, and they want to go over to the Kennedy Space Flight Center and go down here, they've got to be very conscious because they just can't do it like they normally would, because unless they've done their homework to find these chargers. Once again, I think Rachel, it was a fun article to read. I highly recommend it to anyone that just wants to bone up on their knowledge. But what they faced and what happened to them is, unfortunately, is very typical of what the first-time EV buyer that's not schooled in this like we are is going to experience. And this, real quick before we wind it up, this brought up another issue we recently had in the Toyota,
BZ4X.
BZ4X, their first all-electric SUV, I guess, or I guess they had the RAV4.
Yeah, the RAV4. This is the first full production one.
Full production one. And we were complaining because it's pretty simplified on the inside and it doesn't give you as much information as we would have liked to have had. But that's probably what most buyers will want. Anyway, so you still got to do your homework if you're going to take a trip in an EV. Moving on real quick, do we add another question from Larry Mandel? What are some of the best phone apps for EVs? I think we touched on a couple, the Alt Fuel one from the U.S. Department of Energy and PlugShare. Anybody got any others?
Yeah, so one of the things that Rachel could have really, really used, and it would have helped a lot, is there's a fantastic app that will do route planning for you, and it's called A Better Route Planner. They have a browser, they have an app on the phone. Essentially, you put in your EV, you can even put, I'm starting at this percentage, and it will tell you where to stop, how long you're going to stop, and how long it's going to take you to get to your destination. It'll say you're driving 12 hours and you're stopping for an hour and a half to charge. Because what it's going to do is it's going to, these things are more complicated than our brains. Like an app is going to tell you the most efficient way for you to charge. And sometimes the most efficient way for you to charge is not charging all the way to 80%, right? It'll tell you to, charge this percentage.
Because you don't need that much to get where you're going.
You don't need that much to get where you're going. So, yeah, a better route planner is something that I would recommend. And, of course, unfortunately, you're going to need pretty much every branded public EV charger app, because most of them do it by the phone now, where you have to have your phone and you put your phone up next to it.
Electrify America,
it can
ChargePoint.
Be super simple though, like because I just put a little card, like ChargePoint gave me this card that I put in my Apple Wallet, so it's super simple, easy to recall. You connect your credit card with all of that, and it should be pretty simple. But unfortunately, right now you're going to have a bunch of different apps. So I would recommend anybody who buys an EV should see which ones you're using the most and make sure you keep those on your phone and up to date.
There you go, Larry. I hope that helps. We're going to go back to cars now with an internal combustion engine. The 2022 Volkswagen Jetta GLI, one of our favorites. Greg, is it still one of our favorites?
Yeah. I don't see how you can't have fun in this car.
I mean, it's basically the sedan version of a GTI, but.
Yeah, and it's the GLI is basically equals performance for Volkswagen. We'll start with the engine, as John alluded to before. 228 horsepower, turbo 4-cylinder engine, 258 pound-feet of torque is the fun part of the engine, because it is. It's a torquey little machine, and it's fun to drive around. We had the 6-speed manual, and that is definitely the way I would go. One note, I didn't love the clutch in this one or the long term we had. It just was a little light for my preference, but that is definitely a preference thing. I know there's some people who really, I've talked to people who have really enjoyed the setup. The shifter is just smooth as can be.
Really,
I mean, it's just if you want to teach somebody how to drive a manual transmission, this might be the car to do it on, or a Miata, either of those two. A Miata is just great for everything. I just have to throw that in there. The reason we had this one in was it's actually a refresh version of the GLI. So not a ton has changed. They updated some styling on the front end. The rear end has this new like honeycomb grill, like lower grill, just like a sporty touch, which is then flanked by 2 larger exhaust tips, which Volkswagen says makes the car sound better. It kind of sounded similar to the last one, our long term, which was that pre-refresh one, but still pretty good. I'm pretty sure they enhanced the sound inside through the speakers some way. But again, I'm of the mind that as long as it's tricking my brain into thinking it sounds good, it sounds good, then it sounds good.
Yeah.
If you want a European sports sedan, you can't do better for the money than a Jetta GLI.
Yeah.
You really can.
And they simplified it for you. They used to offer an S grade and then an Autobahn grade, and now it's just like one. You get a GLI, you get everything that they offered on the previous version. Heated seats, nice infotainment, a great looking, their digital gauge cluster. As far as daily drivability, I could drive this thing all day long every week. It's super comfortable on the highway. It does have adaptive suspension, so you can put it into comfort. It tones down some of that exhaust. It makes it a little bit softer. Very drivable. I took I know I keep switching back and forth between the new updated one we drove versus our long term, but they didn't change much in the way of suspension or anything. And I drove it on a 3-hour road trip with my daughter. in a car seat in the back, plenty of room back there for her. I was comfortable up front, and I got like 35, 36 miles per gallon on the highway. It's rated at, I think, 37. And that's solid. That's solid highway mileage.
You get in it. We drive so many big SUVs now and electric vehicles, and you get in it, and it just reminds you of the joy of driving, and we just can't lose that. And this is the kind of car that just says, hey, it doesn't have to be all clogged commuting. You can actually get out with something reasonably priced and just enjoy yourself.
It's just light. It's tossable. It's not intimidating at all. Like if anybody's wondering, like, I don't think I'm ready for a performance version of a Jetta, you are. It's just,
it's not ultra high.
No, it's not high performance at all. I mean, it's just quick enough and just stiff enough to like really kind of liven up your senses a little bit.
Anyone else have any other? It's just a terrific little vehicle. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
Greg said it all.
Quiet around the table. Greg said it all.
I learned how to drive manual in a Jetta, so I'm glad that people could experience the same thing.
Thank goodness they still offer it. Say, before we wrap things up, anyone have any rants or raves this week? Anything bothering them one way or the other?
Yeah.
Greg's got something.
I've come across this a few times, and I have a friend who does it, but using a coffee mug, like a traditional coffee mug with no lid in the car, drives me nuts.
Living on the edge.
I mean, you're a maniac if you do that.
What?
First of all, a coffee mug with a handle that you put your fingers in does not fit in any cup holder known to man in any vehicle.
Well, that's why
and then you're just asking for trouble. I don't care if you are the most careful driver in the history of driving, you are going to spill some coffee around the cup holder in that shifter area, and then you got to clean it. And guess what? If you are one of the people who does this, you're probably not going to clean it because it's going to be gross and it smells. Sticky. And I understand I might be alienating some people, but you are psychotic. If you do this, I just don't why not just get a travel mug, man?
I didn't know.
Or drink your coffee first.
I bet you on Etsy,
I can't talk.
Somebody has created a 3D printed adapter for a cup holder specifically.
Then why not 3D print a lid? What's the point?
It's interesting. I've got an old Ford Ranger, and all of the cup holders have cutouts for handles.
For a mug.
And I use mugs in them because there is a space. It goes around.
All right.
And it's
everybody
got a space.
send me your pictures of your coffee mug in a cup holder, and I will look at all of them and still call you psychotic because it doesn't have a lid on it.
Man, you're going to be getting a lot of ads on Twitter.
It's madness.
I think we're going to leave it right there.
Greg's Twitter handle is MW Greg Carlos with 2 S's.
Please.
Just so you know.
Please send it all to me. I want it.
Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks to Greg Carlos, our Over the Edge reporter, our digital producer, Jessica Ray, and our writer, Alexander Kellum. Alex, thanks a lot. And we're going to thank our audio engineer, Jillian Cookman, our podcast producer, of course, is Jessica Ray, and podcast creator, Bob Mixter. Thanks all of you out there for joining us on this MotorWeek podcast, number 280. If you want more of MotorWeek, hop on over to our website at motorweek.org. If you're wondering where you can see MotorWeek, the television series, go up to the upper right-hand corner of our website, pull down About the Show, put in your zip code, and you'll get a list of stations and times in your area. You can also see us over on MAV TV at mavtv.com. Pull down schedule, and they'll tell you when we're seen in your areas. Plus, you can stream us. You can go to youtube.com/MotorWeek and see all of our features. We're at pbs.org/MotorWeek, and it's a free stream of all of our recent episodes. If you have a video screen of any type, you can watch and listen to MotorWeek. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being a part of MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, TireRack.com, and RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.